I was flying that day. I was listening to it on my Walkman on my way to the airport. And in fact, at first I thought it was some shock jock's joke in the morning. And then I saw it wasn't that when the first plane hit, and I thought, oh, this is going to be like the World Trade, because at first they thought it was just a little commuter plane. In fact, that's one of the things I've wanted to get, ask a news station for the coverage. That first, like, 6 hours. I would love to see that. But I was listening to it on the radio, and on the radio station I was listening to, when the second plane flew in, you know, they gasped and said, there's another plane. And then they took it back and said, oh, no, I'm sorry. That must have been the footage from a different angle of the first plane. They didn't even believe it. And then a few seconds later, it was clear that it was. And I was still pulling into LaGuardia. I'm in the cab listening to all this. And I wasn't really... I hadn't been hooked into the Muslim attack on America, so it didn't occur to me until later that day. I'm a Muslim cab driver, and I lurched forward when the second plane hit, because at first they're just saying it's a commuter plane. Now the second plane hits. I lurched forward and I tell him another plane hit the second World Trade Center, and he was probably ahead of me on who was behind it, and he was completely expressionless. He did not respond at all to this, and I sort of suspect he was thinking, oh, S word, it's going to be the Arabs and my life is going to be hell.
And did you turn around and just go home?
No, I had obligations. I was flying to meet Catherine Harris for lunch that day. I had a speech to give, and then I was flying to Chicago to meet James Carville in 2 days. I make money off speeches. 90% of what I do, I don't make money off of. This was going to be a big collection day for me, and so I had to at least try. So I went in. Fortunately, I never checked my bags. Planes were grounded. I'm listening to the whole thing on my Walkman. I called my friend Pat Caddell in California and started yelling into his machine, wake up and turn on the TV. And as soon as they said, no planes leaving today, I was the first one in the cab line because I was worried about getting back into New York. I'm listening to my Walkman, and I hear they're shutting down an airport. And I really, you know, Manhattan's under attack. All I wanted to do was get back into Manhattan. And so I hear the bridge is shut down, and I told my cab driver, unfortunately, he knew Queens. I said, you got to take me to the closest subway stop in Queens to New York. So he zooms through the back roads. I go running up onto the subway platform. A train is pulling away into Manhattan, and that's the last train that left that day. Giuliani wouldn't let any, even walking across the bridge. So I went to a bar, and I sat in a bar for 6 hours watching it on TV. And eventually I found some friends. You know, cell phones weren't working very well in New York because the tower knocked off, and also everyone's on their cell phones. My parents were out in Denver. My brothers both work in New York. So eventually, you know, I was both calling and watching it on TV, and eventually I found some friends and stayed in Queens that night. No, even in the first 3 weeks when they were behaving well, you know, I said, I think to my agent, you know, everybody pulling together here and the Democrats behaving normally is bad for business, but I am sure that it's driving me less crazy than it's driving the New York Times. Having to mouth these patriotic platitudes. They'll cry uncle before I do.